Sometimes love demands the unthinkable. This is the story of Russell, a 72-year-old man who sold the one thing that gave him freedom, his beloved motorcycle, to pay for his wife's cancer treatment. He thought he'd lost everything that mattered, until one Saturday morning, when the thunder of 50 engines rolled into his driveway. And what the biker community did next changed everything. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Russell Thompson stood in his garage, running his weathered hand across the chrome gas tank one last time. The 1978 Harley-Davidson Shovelhead gleamed under the single hanging bulb, every inch polished to mirror perfection. He'd owned this bike for 34 years, longer than most marriages lasted. Every scratch had a story, every mile had a memory, but today those memories had to end. Inside the house, Diane sat wrapped in blankets despite the summer heat, her once vibrant auburn hair now thin and brittle from chemotherapy. Stage 3 ovarian cancer. The words still felt like a punch to Russell's gut every time he thought them. The doctor said there was a new treatment, experimental, promising, expensive. Insurance covered some of it, but not enough. Not nearly enough. Russell had cashed in his small retirement fund, sold their second car, pawned Diane's jewelry, though she'd protested weakly from the couch. But it still wasn't enough. They needed another $12,000 for the next round of treatment, and they needed it within 2 weeks. That's when Russell looked at the garage. Russell. Diane's voice was a whisper from the bedroom. "You don't have to do this." He walked inside, forcing a smile he didn't feel. "It's just a bike, Di." Her eyes filled with tears. "It's not just a bike. It's your father's bike. It's every Sunday ride we took before I got sick. It's metal and rubber," Russell interrupted gently, sitting on the edge of their bed. He took her frail hand in his. "You're flesh and blood. You're my wife of 43 years. There's no choice here." But there was pain in his eyes, and Diane saw it. Russell had inherited that shovelhead from his father, a Vietnam veteran who'd taught him everything about bikes and honor and what it meant to be a man. "You take care of what matters," his father used to say. "Everything else is just noise." The bike had been Russell's sanctuary, his therapy, his connection to a father he'd lost too soon. Every Sunday for decades, Russell and Diane had ridden together, her arms wrapped around him, the wind washing away whatever troubles the week had brought. The bike represented freedom, youth, a life before cancer stole their peace. Now he was selling freedom to buy time. The next morning, Russell posted the ad online. Within hours, messages flooded in. Collectors, enthusiasts, people who understood what a pristine 78 Shovelhead was worth. Russell had maintained it obsessively, original parts, documented history, engine that purred like the day it rolled off the line. By afternoon, a man named Gary arrived in a pristine Lexus. He circled the bike slowly, nodding with appreciation. "This is immaculate. You're asking 12,000? Russell nodded, throat tight. "I'll give you 15, Gary said. "This is a collector's dream." Russell wanted to feel relief. Instead, he felt hollow. Gary pulled out his checkbook right there in the garage. The transaction took 10 minutes. Russell watched the stranger roll his father's motorcycle into a trailer, watched it disappear down the street, and felt a piece of himself vanish with it. Inside, he handed Diane the check. She sobbed into his chest. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." "Don't be," Russell said, holding her tight. "We're going to beat this. That's all that matters." But that night, after Diane fell asleep, Russell sat in the empty garage. The oil stain where the shovelhead had stood looked like a wound. He pressed his palms to his eyes, shoulders shaking with silent grief. The next day, Russell walked into the oncology center and handed over the check. The receptionist smiled professionally and scheduled Diane's next treatment. Russell sat in the waiting room, surrounded by other patients and families, all fighting their own battles with grace or desperation or both. An older woman across from him noticed his worn leather jacket, the one with the faded riding patches. "You ride?" she asked kindly. "Used to," Russell said quietly. He didn't elaborate. When Diane came out from her consultation, she looked exhausted but hopeful. The doctor had reviewed her latest scans. The treatment was working, slowly but working. She might have years ahead of her, years Russell had just bought with chrome and memories. They walked to their remaining car, a beat-up sedan that rattled and struggled. Russell helped Diane into the passenger seat, his hands gentle despite their calluses. As he drove home, they passed a group of bikers at a red light. The rumble of their engines made Russell's chest ache. One of the riders, a broad-shouldered man with a grey beard and a vest covered in patches, glanced over and nodded respectfully at Russell's jacket. Russell nodded back. A silent acknowledgement between riders. The light changed. The bikers roared away, their engines fading into the distance. Russell watched them go, gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary. "You miss it," Diane said softly. "It wasn't a question. I miss a lot of things," Russell replied. "But I've still got you. That's enough." Diane reached over and squeezed his hand. That evening, Russell tried to settle into a new routine. Without Sunday rides to look forward to, the weekends felt empty. He busied himself with small projects around the house, fixing the porch railing, cleaning gutters, anything to keep moving. But the garage haunted him. He'd open the door out of habit, expecting to see the shovelhead waiting. Instead, just empty space and that damned oil stain. He'd started avoiding the garage altogether, taking the long way around the house to reach the trash cans. Diane noticed. She always noticed. "Russell," she said one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, "I want you to know something. If I don't make it, don't talk like that. Listen to me," she insisted gently. "If I don't make it, I want you to buy another bike. I want you to ride again. Promise me." Russell's jaw clenched. "I'm not making that promise because you're going to be fine. Russell, you're going to be fine. Die. We didn't sacrifice everything just to give up now." She smiled sadly and leaned her head on his shoulder. But Russell's heart was heavy. He'd given up the bike. He'd give up anything. But what he couldn't give up was the growing fear that maybe, just maybe, it wouldn't be enough. That maybe the universe would take Diane anyway. And he'd be left with nothing. No bike, no wife, no purpose. The thought terrified him more than he'd ever admit. As darkness settled over their small neighborhood, Russell held Diane close, listening to her breathe. Grateful for every moment but haunted by the cost of each one. He didn't know it yet. But his sacrifice hadn't gone unnoticed. Someone had been watching, and soon the thunder of engines would return to his driveway, not to take, but to give back everything he thought he'd lost. The weeks following the sale were harder than Russell expected, not just emotionally but practically. Without the bike, getting to Diane's appointments meant relying on their aging sedan, which broke down twice in the first month alone. Each repair chipped away at the little savings they had left. Russell found himself at Joe's auto shop more than he wanted. Joe, the mechanic, was a decent enough guy, but his waiting room was always packed with locals who had nothing better to do than gossip. That's where the whispers started. "Did you hear about Russell Thompson?" A woman named Linda said, not quite quietly enough. "Sold his daddy's bike. That beautiful Harley. Probably couldn't afford to keep it running." Another voice chimed in. "You know they're struggling since Diane got sick." Russell sat in the corner, pretending to read a magazine, his jaw tight. He wanted to stand up and explain, tell them he'd sold it to save his wife's life, that it wasn't about money problems or failure. But pride kept him seated. Let them think what they want. When Joe finally called him back, the news wasn't good. The transmission was shot. $2,000 to fix minimum. Russell's face went pale. "Joe, I don't have that kind of money right now." Joe scratched his head sympathetically. "I can do a payment plan, but Russell, this car's on its last legs." "You might want to think about just fix what you can for now," Russell interrupted. "Whatever keeps it running." Joe patched it together for $300, but warned it wouldn't last long. Russell drove home slowly, the car making ominous grinding sounds. At the pharmacy the next day, things got worse. Diane's new prescription came to $470 after insurance. Russell stared at his debit card, doing mental math. If he paid this, they'd overdraft. If he didn't, Diane would be in pain. The pharmacist, a younger woman named Beth, watched him hesitate. "Mr. Thompson, is everything all right?" Behind him a line was forming. Russell could feel eyes on his back. "Can you—" His voice cracked. "Can you give me half now? I'll come back Friday with the rest when my check deposits." Beth's expression softened with pity that made Russell's stomach turn. "I'm sorry, sir. We can't split prescriptions like that." A man behind Russell sighed loudly. "Come on, buddy. Some of us have places to be." Russell's hands trembled as he put the card back in his wallet. "I'll come back Friday." He turned to leave, and the man who'd sighed muttered to his companion, "Old guy can't even afford his wife's medicine. Sad." Russell kept walking, but the words followed him to the parking lot, where he sat in his dying car and pressed his forehead against the steering wheel. For the first time since Diane's diagnosis, he felt truly defeated. That evening, he told Diane about the prescription. She immediately tried to downplay her pain, insisting she could wait until Friday. But Russell saw her wince when she moved, saw her bite her lip to keep from crying out. He lay awake that night, listening to Diane's labored breathing, feeling like a failure. He'd sold everything, done everything right, and still it wasn't enough. Word spread fast in their small town. By Sunday, neighbors who used to wave now looked away. At the grocery store, Russell overheard two men talking by the produce section. Thompson sold that Harley for what, 12 grand? Where'd all that money go? Cancer treatment's expensive, but still. Guy looks like he's broke. Probably didn't manage it right. My cousin had cancer and didn't have to sell everything. Russell gripped his shopping cart tighter, knuckles white. He wanted to turn around and explain that cancer doesn't have a budget, that every case is different, that Diane's treatment was experimental and costly and their only hope. But he said nothing, just finished his shopping with his head down. The worst moment came at the diner, where he and Diane used to have breakfast every Saturday. Russell went alone now. Diane was too weak most mornings. He sat at their usual booth, ordered coffee and tried to read the newspaper. 3 booths over, a group of younger men were laughing loudly. One of them, a guy named Derek who'd gone to school with Russell's son, noticed him. "Hey, isn't that the old biker dude?" Derek said, not bothering to lower his voice. "The one who had that sick Harley?" "Yeah," his friend replied. "Heard he had to sell it. Couldn't keep up with the payments or something?" Derek laughed. "Man, that's rough. Imagine being that old and having to sell your toys. Probably should have planned better for retirement, maybe spent too much time riding around instead of saving money," another added. The table erupted in laughter. Russell's coffee cup rattled against the saucer as he set it down. His heart pounded, not from exertion, but from pure humiliation. These kids didn't know anything. Didn't know about sacrifice or love, or what it meant to choose between your passion and your partner's life. The waitress, an older woman named Carol, who'd known Russell for years, came over quickly. "Don't listen to them, Russell. They're idiots." "It's fine," Russell said quietly, though his voice shook. "It's not fine. Want me to kick them out?" Russell shook his head. "Just bring me the check." He left a tip he couldn't afford and walked out, feeling every pair of eyes in the diner on his back. In the parking lot, he heard Derek's voice carry through the open window. "Dude couldn't even finish his coffee. That's embarrassing." More laughter. Russell sat in his car, hands gripping the steering wheel, and realized something had shifted. He'd spent his whole life being respected, as a father, a husband, a skilled mechanic, a rider. Now he was just another old man the world had stopped caring about. The humiliation burned deeper than he expected, not because of what people said, but because part of him wondered if they were right. Should he have planned better? Saved more? Been smarter with money? But then he thought of Diane's smile, the way she'd squeezed his hand after her last treatment, the doctor's cautious optimism about her latest scan results. No, he'd made the right choice, the only choice. But that didn't make the shame hurt any less. When Russell got home, Diane was sleeping on the couch. He covered her with a blanket, kissed her forehead, and went out to the empty garage. He sat on an overturned crate where the shovelhead used to be and let himself feel everything. The loss, the humiliation, the exhaustion. He didn't cry. He just sat in the silence, surrounded by the ghost of what used to be. What Russell didn't know was that Derek's friend had recorded part of the diner incident on his phone. Just a quick video, Russell sitting alone looking defeated. The audio catching Derek's mocking words. That video would be posted online that night with the caption, "Old-timer sold his bike and still can't afford coffee." Life comes at you fast, and someone who mattered would see it. The wheels were already in motion. Russell just didn't know it yet. 200 miles away, in a weathered clubhouse that smelled of motor oil and leather, Cole Martinez scrolled through his phone while nursing his second cup of coffee. At 58, Cole had been riding with the Iron Brotherhood MC for 32 years. He'd seen a lot in that time, good men, bad men, and everything in between. The clubhouse was quiet this Saturday morning. A few brothers tinkered with bikes in the garage bay. Others played pool in the corner. Cole was about to put his phone down when a video popped up in a riding group he followed. The caption made him pause. "Old-timer sold his bike and still can't afford coffee. Life comes at you fast." Cole almost scrolled past. The internet was full of people mocking others, but something made him tap play. Maybe it was the mention of a bike. Maybe it was intuition. The video was short, barely 20 seconds. It showed an elderly man sitting alone in a diner booth, hands wrapped around a coffee cup. In the background, young voices laughed and made cruel comments about him selling his Harley, about not planning for retirement, about being broke and pathetic. The old man's face was partially visible, weathered proud despite the slumped shoulders, and he wore a faded riding jacket with patches Cole recognized. Vintage motorcycle club insignias, the kind real riders wore. Cole's jaw tightened. He replayed the video, turning up the volume. That's when he caught it. Thompson sold that Harley for what, 12 grand? Thompson sold his Harley. Cole stood abruptly, his chair scraping against concrete. "Frank, get over here." Frank Morrison, a younger member with a tablet permanently attached to his hand, jogged over. "What's up, Prez?" Cole was already typing furiously into his phone. "Need you to find something. Old rider, last name Thompson, sold a Harley recently. Probably vintage. See what you can dig up." Frank's fingers flew across his tablet. "On it, what am I looking for specifically?" "Context," Cole growled. Why a lifer would sell his bike. It took Frank less than 10 minutes. Social media, local news archives, community forums. The kid was a wizard with information. "Got him," Frank said, turning his tablet around. "Russell Thompson, 72. Lives about 40 miles from here in Millbrook. Sold a 1978 Shovelhead 3 weeks ago. Beautiful bike, pristine condition. Get this. His wife Diane has stage 3 ovarian cancer. He sold it to pay for experimental treatment." The clubhouse had gone quiet. Other members had gathered around, listening. Cole stared at the screen, at a photo of Russell and Diane from happier times, both sitting on that Shovelhead, Diane's arms wrapped around Russell, both of them grinning like teenagers. "He sold his father's bike," Cole said softly, reading further. "Inherited it, kept it for 34 years. One of the older members, a man named Hank, with more grey than black in his beard, let out a low whistle. "That's not just selling a bike. That's selling your soul." "For love," another voice added. Cole looked up at the brothers gathered around him. 15 men, all watching, all understanding exactly what Russell had sacrificed. Because every one of them knew what their bikes meant. Freedom, identity, legacy. "And now punks are mocking him online," Frank added, showing them the video again. "It's got like 5,000 views already. Comments are brutal." Cole read through them, his anger building with each one. Should have saved money instead of wasting it on a bike. Old people always crying poor. Probably spent it all on stupid stuff. "They don't get it," Hank muttered. "None of them get it." Cole was already pulling up the Iron Brotherhood's group chat, fingers moving fast. "They're about to." Within an hour, the message had spread through the entire MC network. Not just the Iron Brotherhood, but allied clubs across 3 states. Cole had included the full story. Russell's sacrifice, Diane's cancer, the humiliation, the video. The responses came flooding in. "When we riding? Count me in. This is what Brotherhood is for. That man's one of us. We take care of our own." Cole called an emergency church meeting. Bikers speak for an official club gathering. Within 2 hours, the clubhouse was packed. Not just Iron Brotherhood members, but riders from the Steel Riders MC, the Road Kings, even a few independents who'd heard and wanted to help. 53 riders in total. Cole stood at the front, arms crossed. Here's what we know. Russell Thompson is a brother, maybe not wearing our patch, but he's got the heart. He sacrificed his bike, his father's bike, to save his wife. And now the world's treating him like he's invisible, like he's nothing. That ends today, someone called out. Damn right it does, Cole replied. But we're not just showing up. We're making this right. Frank, tell them what we're doing. Frank stepped forward with his tablet. We've set up a fund. Every club that wants in is contributing. We've also reached out to local businesses. Some have agreed to donate. Between cash, gift cards, and resources, we've got about $18,000 and counting. Murmurs of approval rippled through the crowd. But it's not just about money, Cole continued. It's about showing Russell and Diane that they're not alone. That sacrifice doesn't go unnoticed. That brotherhood means something. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Hank raised his hand. When do we ride? Cole checked his phone. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. We meet here, ride out together. All 53 of us. The clubhouse erupted in agreement, fists pounding tables, voices raised in solidarity. But Cole held up a hand for silence. One more thing. When we get there, we do this right. No intimidation, no showing off. We're there to restore dignity, not our egos. This isn't about us looking good. It's about making sure Russell knows he matters. Understood? Every head nodded. That night, Cole couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Russell, sitting in that diner, alone, humiliated, wondering if selling everything had been worth it. He thought about Diane fighting cancer, probably consumed with guilt that her illness had cost her husband the thing he loved most. Cole had been riding for over 3 decades. He'd lost brothers to accidents, to disease, to time. He'd seen the best and worst of humanity on these roads. But he'd also learned something fundamental. True brotherhood wasn't about the patch on your back or the chrome between your legs. It was about showing up when it mattered. And tomorrow, 53 riders would show up for a man they'd never met. Because that's what real bikers did. They protected their own. At Russell's house, the old man lay awake beside Diane, unaware that 200 miles away, engines were being tuned, funds were being gathered, and an army of leather and chrome was preparing to roll. He didn't know that his humiliation had been witnessed. He didn't know that the video meant to mock him had instead ignited something powerful. He didn't know that by sunrise, everything would change. All Russell knew was that tomorrow was Sunday, the day he used to ride with Diane, the day that now felt emptier than ever. But Sunday morning would bring thunder, and with it, a restoration Russell never saw coming. Sunday morning arrived cool and clear. Russell woke at dawn out of habit, the same time he used to wake to prep the Shovelhead for their weekly ride. For a moment, still caught between sleep and consciousness, he forgot. His mind reached for the familiar routine. Check the weather, make coffee, head to the garage. Then reality settled in. No bike, no ride, just another empty Sunday. He made coffee quietly, trying not to wake Diane. She'd had a rough night, her pain medication wearing off too quickly. Russell had held her hand in the darkness, helpless, until she finally drifted back to sleep around 4 a.m. As golden light filtered through the kitchen window, Russell sat at the table with his coffee and stared at nothing. The house was too quiet. Sundays used to roar with possibility. Now they just echoed with loss. At 8:30, Diane emerged from the bedroom wrapped in her robe. She'd lost so much weight that it hung loose on her frame. "Morning," she said softly, kissing the top of his head. "Morning, beautiful. How are you feeling?" "Better," she lied. They both knew it, but Russell didn't push. They sat together in comfortable silence, Diane sipping tea while Russell nursed his second cup of coffee. Through the window, they could see their neighbor trimming his hedge. A young couple walking their dog, the world moving forward like it always did. "I miss the rides," Diane said suddenly. Russell reached for her hand. "Me too. Not just the riding," she continued. "I miss feeling like we were invincible, you know? Like nothing could touch us as long as we were moving." Russell's throat tightened. "We're still invincible, Di. We're still fighting," she smiled weakly. "I know. It just feels different now." At exactly 9 a.m., 200 miles away, 53 motorcycles roared to life in perfect synchronization. The sound was thunder made mechanical, deep, resonant, powerful. Cole sat at the front of the formation, his road king gleaming in the morning sun. "Let's ride," he called out. The convoy moved out in 2 perfect columns, engines harmonizing into a symphony of chrome and horsepower. Passers-by stopped and stared. Car windows rattled as they passed. This wasn't just a group of bikers. This was a statement rolling down the highway. At 10:15, Russell was helping Diane back to bed when he heard it. Distant at first, like rolling thunder on a clear day. He paused, head tilted. "You hear that?" he asked. Diane listened. "Sounds like motorcycles." The sound grew louder, closer, not just 1 or 2 bikes, but many. The windows began to vibrate. Pictures rattled on the walls. Russell walked to the front door, confused. The rumble was deafening now, getting closer with each second. "Russell!" Diane's voice carried worry. "What's happening?" He opened the front door and froze. Down the street, chrome glinted in the sunlight. 1 motorcycle appeared around the corner. Then 2, then 5. Then too many to count quickly. They filled the street like a river of metal and leather. Engines growling in unison, the sound shaking the very foundation of the house. Neighbors emerged from their homes, phones already recording. Kids ran to the curb, eyes wide with excitement and fear. The convoy slowed, then stopped. All 53 motorcycles lined both sides of Russell's street, engines idling in a powerful rumble that felt like a heartbeat. Russell stood on his porch, gripping the railing, completely stunned. His legs felt weak. Cole dismounted first, removing his helmet. He was a towering figure, 6'3", with broad shoulders, a grey beard, and eyes that had seen everything. His vest was covered in patches, each one telling a story of miles and brotherhood. He walked up Russell's driveway with purpose. "Russell Thompson?" Cole's voice was deep, steady. Russell could barely speak. "Yes, what's going on?" Cole stopped at the bottom of the porch steps. Behind him, the other 52 riders dismounted, standing beside their bikes in silent solidarity. "We heard what you did," Cole said. "We heard you sold your father's Shovelhead to save your wife." Russell's face flushed. "How did you—" "Doesn't matter how," Cole interrupted gently. "What matters is that we're brothers, all of us, and brothers don't let brothers stand alone." 2 riders stepped forward, carrying large duffel bags. They set them at Russell's feet. "What is this?" Russell whispered. "Open them," Cole said. With trembling hands, Russell unzipped the first bag. Inside, grocery store gift cards, gas cards, restaurant vouchers, stacks of cash rubber-banded together. He opened the second bag. More cash, pharmacy gift cards, and at the bottom an envelope. "There's $18,000 there," Cole said. "From riders across 3 states. Some are club members, some are independents, some just heard your story and wanted to help." Russell's knees buckled. He grabbed the porch railing to keep from falling. I can't accept this," he stammered. "I'm not charity." "This isn't charity," Cole said firmly. "This is respect. You made a sacrifice that most men wouldn't have the courage to make. You chose love over everything else. That deserves to be honored." Diane appeared in the doorway, leaning against the frame for support. She stared at the scene before her. 53 bikers, their motorcycles, the bags of money and resources. "Oh my God," she breathed. Cole looked up at her. "Mrs. Thompson, your husband sold his soul to save yours. We're just here to give it back." Tears streamed down Russell's face. He tried to speak but couldn't form words. One of the older riders, Hank, stepped forward. "Brother, I've been riding for 40 years. I know what that bike meant to you. We all do. And we know that selling it damn near killed you. But you did it anyway because that's what real men do. They sacrifice for the people they love. Another rider called out, "You're not alone, Russell." Others joined in. "We've got your back. Brotherhood forever."
Riders take care of riders.
The street erupted in support, engines revving in salute, fists raised in solidarity. Neighbors who had whispered cruel gossip just days ago now stood watching, some wiping tears from their eyes. The young couple who'd walked past Russell without a glance that morning stood on their lawn, the woman crying openly. Russell sank onto his porch steps, shoulders shaking with sobs. Diane made her way down slowly, sitting beside him, both of them overwhelmed. Cole knelt in front of them. "Russell, we can't give you back your father's bike. That one's gone. But we can make sure you and Diane have what you need. Medical bills, groceries, car repairs, whatever it takes. You're part of the Brotherhood now. And we don't abandon our own." Russell looked up, eyes red and streaming. "Why, you don't even know me." Cole's expression softened. "Because someone once showed up for me when I had nothing, and I swore that when I had the chance, I'd do the same for someone else. Today, you're that someone." Frank stepped forward with a folder. "We've also set up a fund for Diane's ongoing treatment. Local businesses have pledged support. You're not fighting this alone anymore." Russell couldn't stop crying. 43 years of pride, of standing tall, of never asking for help, all of it crumbled in the face of such overwhelming kindness. Diane wrapped her arms around him, both of them holding each other, while 53 bikers stood witness to a moment of pure humanity. This was what brotherhood looked like, not patches or clubs or territory, just people showing up when it mattered most. The street was still filled with the rumble of idling engines when a beat-up pickup truck screeched around the corner. Derek and his two friends had seen the social media posts. Videos of bikers flooding a residential street were going viral fast. They'd come to see the spectacle, phones ready to capture more content. Derek leaned out the passenger window, laughing. "Yo, look at this." Did Grandpa call his biker buddies to feel important? The truck slowed as it approached the wall of motorcycles. The laughter died in Derek's throat when he saw how many riders there actually were, and how none of them were smiling. Cole turned slowly, his eyes locking onto the truck. Every rider shifted their attention to the vehicle. The air changed, thickened with tension. Derek's friend Tyler was driving. He put the truck in park, trying to maintain his bravado. "What's all this about? Old man couldn't handle being a joke online?" Cole took 3 steps toward the truck. The movement was calm, controlled, but carried the weight of someone who'd spent decades commanding respect. "Get out," Cole said. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the engine noise like a blade. "What?" Derek stammered. "I said get out of the truck." Tyler nervously laughed. "Man, we're just... now!" The word wasn't shouted, but 53 engines revved in unison, a mechanical growl of warning. The sound made the truck vibrate. Derek and his friends scrambled out, suddenly looking very young and very small. The third friend, a kid named Brian, couldn't have been more than 22. Cole walked up until he was face to face with Derek. "You're the one who posted the video, the one at the diner." It wasn't a question. Derek's swagger evaporated. It was just a joke, man. Nothing serious." "A joke," Cole repeated slowly. He turned slightly, gesturing to Russell, who still sat on the porch with Diane. "You see that man? That's Russell Thompson. He's 72 years old. You know what he did 3 weeks ago?" Derek shifted uncomfortably. "Look, I heard he sold his bike. He sold his father's motorcycle." Cole interrupted, his voice rising now. "A 1978 Shovelhead he'd owned for 34 years. His most prized possession. You know why?" "Silence, answer me." "His wife," Derek mumbled. "Cancer treatment." "That's right," Cole said, stepping closer. "He sold his legacy, his freedom, his connection to his dead father, everything that mattered to him, so his wife could have a chance to live. And you mocked him for it. Made him a joke online for people to laugh at." Hank stepped forward, his voice rough with emotion. "Have you ever loved someone so much you'd give up everything? Have you ever had to choose between what you love and who you love?" Derek looked down. "No." "Then you don't get to judge him," Hank growled. "You don't get to mock sacrifice when you've never made one." Frank pulled out his tablet, turning it toward the three young men. Your video's been shared 12,000 times. Thousands of people laughed at a man's pain because you thought it was funny. You stripped him of his dignity for likes and shares. Brian, the youngest, spoke up shakily. We didn't know the whole story. You didn't care about the whole story, another rider called out. That's the problem. Russell stood slowly, Diane helping him up. He walked down the porch steps, moving through the wall of riders who parted respectfully. He stood before Derek, this young man who'd caused him so much humiliation. The street went absolutely silent. Do you know what shame feels like? Russell asked quietly. His voice trembled, but not with weakness, with restrained emotion. Do you know what it's like to sit in a diner, drinking coffee you can barely afford, while strangers laugh about your failures? Derek couldn't meet his eyes. I worked for 47 years, Russell continued. Raised a family, paid my taxes, lived an honest life. And then my wife got sick, and everything I'd built started falling apart. But I didn't complain. I made choices. Our choices? His voice broke slightly. That bike was the last piece of my father I had left. Every Sunday for 34 years, I'd sit on that machine and feel him with me. And I gave it up without hesitation because Diane's life is worth more than any memory, any possession, any pride. Tears ran down Russell's weathered face. You took my worst moment and made it entertainment. You made me feel like my sacrifice meant nothing. Like I was nothing. Derek's own eyes were wet now. I'm sorry, he whispered. Sorry isn't enough, Cole said. Sorry is what you say when you accidentally bump into someone. This was cruelty. This was taking a good man's pain and weaponizing it for attention. Tyler stepped forward, voice shaking. What do you want us to do? Cole looked at Russell. That's not my call. It's his. All eyes turned to Russell. He stood there, this elderly man who'd been broken down by circumstance and cruelty, now flanked by 53 riders who'd declared him family. Russell took a deep breath. I want you to understand something. I want you to understand that behind every person you mock, every stranger you judge, there's a story you don't know. There's pain you can't see. And words, even online words, have weight. He stepped closer to Derek. I want you to think about this moment the next time you're tempted to make someone else's struggle your joke. I want you to remember how small you feel right now. And I want you to be better. Derek nodded, tears streaming freely now. I will, I swear I will. The video comes down, Cole said flatly. Today, and you post an apology. A real one. Not some half-hearted sorry if anyone was offended garbage. You tell people what you did wrong and why it matters. I will, Derek promised. And one more thing, Hank added. You see someone struggling? Someone being mocked or overlooked? You step up. You be the person who shows up, not the person who tears down. You owe Russell that much. All three young men nodded vigorously. Russell looked at them for a long moment, then nodded. Okay. Cole put a hand on Russell's shoulder. You're a bigger man than me, brother. I'd have made them walk home. The tension broke slightly. A few riders chuckled. Derek and his friends climbed back into their truck quietly, humbled in a way that no amount of anger or punishment could have achieved. As they drove away, slowly, carefully, several neighbors who'd witnessed everything began to clap. The applause spread, people on porches, in yards, standing in the street. They weren't just clapping for the bikers. They were clapping for Russell, for dignity restored. For a moment, when justice felt personal and powerful, Russell turned to face the applause, overwhelmed. Diane stood beside him, her thin frame wrapped in his arm. She looked up at him with such pride, such love, that Russell felt his heart might burst. You did it, she whispered. You stood up. We stood up, Russell corrected, looking at the 53 riders around him. All of us. Cole raised his fist in the air. The other riders did the same. Then in perfect unison, they revved their engines 3 times, a salute, a celebration, a declaration that Russell Thompson was seen, respected, and protected for the first time in months. Russell didn't feel invisible. He felt invincible. The confrontation was over, but the restoration had only just begun. The bikers didn't leave immediately. Instead, they did something Russell never expected. They stayed. Cole organized a few riders to help carry the supplies into Russell's house, while others stood in the driveway, talking with neighbors who'd gathered to witness history. Inside, Russell's small kitchen became command central. Frank laid out all the gift cards and organized them by category: groceries, gas, pharmacy, restaurants. Two riders who happened to be mechanics looked at Russell's dying sedan in the driveway and immediately started diagnosing problems. "Transmission's shot," one said. "But we can get you something better." "I can't ask you to," Russell started. "You're not asking," the mechanic interrupted with a smile. "We're offering." Big difference. Diane sat at the kitchen table, wrapped in a blanket despite the warm day, watching these leather-clad strangers move through her home with purpose and care. A female rider named Sarah sat beside her, holding her hand. "How long have you been fighting?" Sarah asked gently. 8 months, Diane replied. "Some days are better than others." Sarah squeezed her hand. "My sister had breast cancer, stage 4. She beat it." "You keep fighting, okay? You've got a whole army behind you now." Diane's eyes filled with tears. "I feel like I've taken everything from Russell. His bike, his peace, his savings." "Stop," Sarah said firmly but kindly. "You didn't take anything. Cancer did. And Russell chose you because that's what love looks like. Real, messy, sacrificial love. Don't you dare feel guilty for being loved." Outside, Cole stood with Russell on the porch, both men watching the activity. Neighbors who'd avoided Russell for weeks now approached cautiously, offering apologies, bringing casseroles and offers of help. Linda, the woman who'd gossiped at the mechanic shop, came up the driveway with a homemade pie. "Russell, I owe you an apology. I said things, assumed things. I was wrong." Russell accepted the pie graciously. "We all make mistakes." "No," Linda insisted. "What I did was more than a mistake. It was cruel, and I'm sorry." One by one, townspeople came forward. Some brought food, others money, a few just their apologies. The man who'd sighed impatiently at the pharmacy showed up with a check for $500. "For Diane's medications," he said quietly. No questions asked. Russell was overwhelmed by the transformation. Just yesterday, these same people had whispered about him. Now they stood in solidarity. "That's the thing about moments like this," Cole observed. "They show people who they want to be versus who they've been. Sometimes folks just need a push to remember their humanity." By early afternoon, the street had turned into an impromptu block party. Someone brought out a grill. Coolers appeared filled with drinks. Children played in yards while adults talked and laughed. The bikers mingled easily, their intimidating appearance belied by their warmth and humor. Hank sat on Russell's porch steps with a group of neighborhood kids, showing them pictures of his custom bike and explaining the meaning behind different patches. "This one's for every 1,000 miles I've ridden. I've got 42 of them. That's 42,000 miles. A young boy exclaimed. "That's right. And every mile taught me something. About life, about people, about what matters." "What matters?" the boy asked. Hank looked over at Russell, who was laughing at something Cole had said. "Showing up for people who need you. That matters most of all." As the sun began to sink lower, Cole gathered the riders. It was time to head out. But before they left, he had one more surprise. He walked up to Russell with a leather vest. Not a full club cut, but a black vest with a single patch on the back. It read, "Honorary Brother, Iron Brotherhood MC. We want you to have this," Cole said. "You don't have to wear it if you don't want to. But know that anywhere you go, if you're wearing this vest, you've got family. Any rider who sees this will know you're under our protection." Russell's hands trembled as he took the vest. He slipped it on over his worn button-up shirt. It fit perfectly, like it had been made just for him. "I don't know what to say," Russell whispered. "Don't say anything," Cole replied. "Just remember, you're not alone anymore. You call if you need anything. Anything at all. Day or night. We're here." The riders formed up in their original formation, engines roaring back to life. Before they pulled out, they performed one final gesture. All 53 riders removed their helmets, bowed their heads for 5 seconds of silence, a sign of respect reserved for fallen brothers and honored members. Russell stood in his driveway, new vest on, tears streaming down his face. As the convoy slowly pulled away, engines rumbled in farewell, hands waved, and then they were gone, disappearing around the corner like thunder rolling back into the distance. But the silence they left behind wasn't empty. It was full of hope, dignity, and restored faith in humanity. Diane joined Russell in the driveway, leaning against him. "What just happened?" she asked softly. "I think," Russell said slowly, "we just found out we're not as alone as we thought." That evening, Derek's apology video went live. It was genuine, raw, and honest. He explained what he'd done, why it was wrong, and what he'd learned. He encouraged his followers to think before they mock, to remember that everyone is fighting battles they can't see. The video went viral, far more than his original cruel post. Thousands of comments poured in, many from people sharing their own stories of struggle and judgment. The narrative had shifted from mockery to empathy. Russell's story had become more than just one man's sacrifice. It had become a reminder of what communities could be when they chose compassion over cruelty. That night, Russell and Diane sat in their living room, surrounded by bags of groceries, gift cards, and the tangible evidence of love from strangers. The vest hung on the coat rack by the door, its patch catching the lamplight. "Try it on again," Diane urged with a weak smile. Russell laughed and put the vest back on. He stood a little straighter, shoulders back, chin up. "How do I look?" he asked. Diane's eyes welled up. "Like the man I married, strong, proud, loved." Russell sat beside her on the couch, and she curled into him despite her pain. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that comes from decades of marriage, from weathering storms together. "Tomorrow," Diane said softly, "we start your treatments again. The doctor called while you were outside. The funding came through. We can continue with the experimental protocol." Russell closed his eyes, overwhelmed. "It's really happening. It's really happening," she confirmed. "Because 53 angels on motorcycles decided we mattered. We always mattered," Russell said. "We just forgot. They reminded us." Later that night, Russell's phone buzzed with a text from Cole. "Sleep well, brother. Tomorrow's a new day." "You've got this," Russell responded. "Thank you for everything." Cole's reply was simple. That's what family does. Russell set his phone down and looked around his home. At the supplies that would keep them fed for months. At the medical fund that would save Diane's life. At the vest that symbolized belonging. For the first time since Diane's diagnosis, Russell didn't go to bed feeling defeated. He went to bed feeling something he'd almost forgotten, hope. And in the morning, when he woke, he'd face the future knowing he wasn't facing it alone. 3 months passed like a dream. Russell kept checking to see if he'd wake from. But it was real, all of it. Diane's treatment continued, funded by the Bikers Collection and the outpouring of community support that followed. Her scans showed improvement, slow, cautious, but undeniable. The experimental protocol was working. Her oncologist used words like promising and encouraged, words that had been absent from their vocabulary for so long. Russell wore his vest everywhere, to the grocery store, to Diane's appointments, to church on Sundays. And everywhere he went, people noticed. Some bikers would nod in recognition, understanding the patch's significance. Others would simply see an old man wearing leather and smile, sensing there was a story behind it. The sedan that had been on its last breath was replaced by a reliable used SUV, donated by a local dealership after they'd heard Russell's story. The owner, a man named Tom who'd lost his own wife to cancer years ago, handed Russell the keys with tears in his eyes. "Pay it forward when you can," was all he said, and Russell did. It started small. At the pharmacy one Tuesday afternoon, Russell noticed a young mother counting change at the counter, her face pale with stress. Her daughter's antibiotic prescription cost $63. She had 48. Russell stepped forward without hesitation. "Put it on my card," he told the pharmacist. The woman turned, startled. "Sir, you don't have to—" "I know," Russell said gently. "But someone once showed up for me when I needed it most. Let me do the same for you." She burst into tears, hugging Russell, while her young daughter watched with wide eyes. The pharmacist, Beth, the same one who'd witnessed Russell's humiliation months ago, wiped her own tears away. "You're a good man, Mr. Thompson," Beth said softly. Russell just smiled. "I'm just passing on what was given to me." Word spread. Russell Thompson, the man the bikers had saved, was now saving others. He paid for groceries for struggling families, left anonymous tips for overwhelmed waitresses, gave gas cards to people whose tanks were empty. The $18,000 the bikers had raised was being multiplied through acts of kindness that rippled through the community. Cole checked in regularly. Sometimes it was just a text. "How's Diane?" At the times, he'd ride out for coffee. The two men sitting on Russell's porch talking about life, loss, and what it meant to truly live. "You know what you've done?" Cole said one afternoon. "You've reminded people what community looks like. Before you, this town had forgotten how to take care of its own." Russell shook his head. "That wasn't me. That was you and your brothers." "No," Cole insisted. "We just lit the match. You've been keeping the fire burning." One Saturday morning, 4 months after the bikers' arrival, Russell received an unexpected visitor. Derek pulled up in his truck, alone this time, nervous. He approached the porch where Russell sat reading. "Mr. Thompson," Derek said quietly. "Can we talk?" Russell gestured to the empty chair. "Sit," Derek sat, fidgeting with his hands. "I wanted to tell you something. That day with the bikers, with you, it changed me. I've been volunteering at the community center, helping seniors with technology and stuff. And I've been thinking about what you said, about stories we don't know." Russell listened, expression neutral. "I started a project," Derek continued. "I interview people, old people, people who are struggling, people the world overlooks. I record their stories and share them online. Not to mock, but to honor. To show people that everyone matters." He pulled out his phone, showing Russell a video. An elderly veteran talking about his service. A single mother discussing her 3 jobs. A homeless man explaining how one act of kindness had saved his life. Russell watched, then looked at Derek with new eyes. "This is good work. It's because of you," Derek said. "You could have had those bikers destroy me. Instead, you taught me. And I want you to know, I'll spend the rest of my life making sure your lesson wasn't wasted." Russell reached out and shook Derek's hand. "Then we're good." Derek left with tears in his eyes, but peace in his heart. That evening, as Russell helped Diane into bed, she was stronger now, walking more. Smiling more, she took his hand. "I have something to tell you," she said. Her voice stronger than it had been in months. Russell's heart skipped. "What is it?" "The doctor called today. The latest scans. Russell, there's no new growth. The tumors are shrinking." He used the word remission. Russell's world stopped. "What?" "It's early," Diane said quickly. "We have to keep monitoring, keep treating." "But Russell, I might beat this. We might actually win." Russell collapsed onto the bed beside her, holding her while they both cried. Not tears of sorrow this time, but of overwhelming relief and gratitude. 6 months after the bikers' arrival, Cole organized a ride to Russell's house, not for crisis this time, but for celebration. 20 riders showed up, including several who'd been there on that first Sunday, but this time Russell was ready for them. Standing in his driveway was a motorcycle. Not his father's Shovelhead, that was gone forever, but a beautiful used Harley-Davidson Shovelhead, gleaming in the afternoon sun. Cole and the Brotherhood had pooled resources, found the perfect bike, restored it and brought it home. "We can't replace what you lost," Cole said, handing Russell a helmet. "But we can make sure you ride again." Russell stood speechless, running his hands over the chrome. "There's one condition," Hank added with a grin. "You take Diane for a ride." Right now, Diane emerged from the house, wearing her old riding jacket that hung loose on her still-recovering frame. But her eyes were bright, alive, defiant. Russell helped her onto the back of the bike. She wrapped her arms around him, just like she had for decades on the Shovelhead. "Ready?" Russell asked. "I've been ready," Diane laughed. The engine roared to life. The sound was different from his father's bike, but the feeling, the absolute freedom and joy was exactly the same. Russell pulled out of the driveway with 20 motorcycles following behind in formation. They rode through town, engines harmonizing, Diane's laughter carrying on the wind. People came out of shops and homes to watch and wave. The town that had once whispered cruelty now celebrated triumph. They rode for an hour, down country roads, past farmland, through tunnels of trees where sunlight danced through leaves. Diane held Russell tighter, her cheek pressed against his back, and for the first time in a year, neither of them thought about cancer or bills or fear. They only thought about this moment, this gift, this second chance. When they returned home, the bikers lined up for one final salute. Engines revved 3 times, fists raised, and then one by one they rode off into the sunset. Russell and Diane sat on their porch, exhausted and exhilarated. The new motorcycle gleamed in the driveway, not a replacement but a beginning. "We did it," Diane whispered. "We did," Russell agreed. "We survived." "No," Diane corrected, squeezing his hand. "We're not just surviving anymore. We're living." Russell looked down at his vest, at the patch that read "Honorary Brother," and smiled. He'd learned something profound in these months, that sacrifice was never wasted, that community could rise from ashes, and that sometimes, when you give up everything, the universe gives it back in ways you never imagined. He'd sold his father's motorcycle to save his wife's life, and in return, he'd gained 53 brothers, a community transformed, and a second chance to ride into whatever future awaited them. Not alone. Never alone again. Together, as the sun set over their small house. Russell and Diane sat in comfortable silence, the new motorcycle waiting in the driveway like a promise of all the Sundays to come. Sometimes love demands the unthinkable, but sometimes, when you answer that call, the world answers back with thunder. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.